The grand choosing ceremony hall was alive with the scent of incense and nervous sweat. Hundreds of elegantly dressed noble daughters stood in perfect rows, each one hoping to catch the eye of the most powerful man in the realm. King Darius sat on his obsidian throne, cold and imposing, his sharp silver eyes scanning the crowd with bored indifference. He had already decided. He would pick the plainest, most forgettable girl in the room, a throwaway bride to satisfy the tradition and silence the council. No one would challenge him. No one ever did, until his gaze landed on her, a young woman standing near the back, dressed in a simple gown that marked her as low nobility, almost a servant among queens. She kept her head slightly lowered, but there was a quiet defiance in her posture. Then it hit him. Her scent. Sweet wild jasmine mixed with warm honey and something deeper, something that made his wolf surge forward with a force he had never felt before. King Darius froze. His hand tightened on the arm of his throne. The Coldest Alpha King, who had planned to choose a disposable bride without a second thought, suddenly found his entire world narrowing to one woman. Callista. Chapter 1. The grand hall of the Obsidian Palace shimmered under crystal chandeliers and the heavy scent of night-blooming jasmine. Hundreds of noble daughters stood in perfect formation, each one dressed in the finest silks and jewels their houses could afford. They were here for one purpose: to be chosen by the most powerful alpha in the realm. King Darius sat upon the black throne like a god of winter, tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating cold authority. His silver-gray eyes swept over the crowd with bored indifference. He had already made his decision days ago. He would pick the most unremarkable girl in the room, a throwaway bride, someone quiet, someone who would warm his bed when required and stay out of his way the rest of the time, someone who would satisfy the ancient choosing ceremony and silence the council's endless nagging about producing an heir. No feelings, no complications, no weakness. The auctioneer's voice rang through the hall. The choosing begins. One by one, the highborn ladies were presented. Each curtsied gracefully, offering practiced smiles and lowered eyes. King Darius barely looked at most of them, until his gaze landed on the girl near the back row. She was dressed more simply than the others, a soft cream gown with minimal embroidery, marking her as low nobility, almost an afterthought. Her long dark hair was braided neatly, and she kept her head slightly lowered. But there was something in the way she stood, quiet strength mixed with subtle defiance. Then it hit him. Her scent. Sweet wild jasmine, warm honey, and something deeper. Something that made his wolf slam against the cage of his control with savage force. King Darius's hand tightened on the arm of his throne until the wood creaked. His heart, which had beaten with mechanical coldness for years, suddenly thundered in his chest. Callista. He knew her name without being told. He knew it in his bones. The Alpha King who had come to this ceremony planning to choose a disposable bride was now staring at the one woman whose scent had just awakened something primal and dangerous inside him. The one woman who could ruin everything. Callista lifted her eyes for just a moment and met his gaze. Time seemed to stop, and in that single heartbeat, King Darius realized with cold, terrifying clarity. He had just found his fated mate. Chapter 2. The silence in the grand hall was deafening. King Darius remained seated on his throne, but every muscle in his body was coiled tight. His wolf was howling inside him, demanding he cross the distance and claim what was his. Callista stood frozen among the other brides, her bright hazel eyes wide with shock as she stared back at him. For a brief second, something flickered across her face: confusion, fear, and a spark of recognition she clearly didn't understand. Then the moment broke. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, have you made your choice?" Darius's voice came out low, dangerous, and far too controlled. Her. A ripple of stunned whispers swept through the hall. Several noble ladies looked visibly relieved. Others looked offended, but no one dared question him. Callista's face paled. Two guards moved toward her immediately. She took one instinctive step back before catching herself. Her chin lifted in quiet defiance as they escorted her forward. Darius watched every movement. The way she walked, graceful but guarded. The slight tremble in her hands that she tried to hide by clenching them into fists. The way her scent grew stronger the closer she came. When she finally stood before the throne, she dropped into a perfect curtsy, but her eyes remained locked on his. "Your Majesty," she said, voice steady despite everything. "I am Callista Voss, daughter of House Voss. I am honored." She was lying. He could smell it. Darius rose from his throne. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath as he descended the steps and stopped directly in front of her. He towered over her. Up close, her scent was intoxicating, wild jasmine and warm honey with an undercurrent of something uniquely her. His wolf surged again, pushing against his iron control. "You are mine now," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. "By law and by choice." Callista's breath hitched. For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw raw panic in her green-gold eyes. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "Neither did I," he replied. Their eyes remained locked. The air between them crackled with tension, fear, confusion, and something far more dangerous. Darius reached out slowly and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. He lifted them to his lips and pressed a single, deliberate kiss to her knuckles. The hall erupted in polite applause. But inside, the Alpha King was already unraveling. Because the woman he had chosen as a throwaway bride had just become the most dangerous thing in his kingdom. His fated mate. Chapter 3. The private chambers of the king felt colder than the grand hall. Callista stood near the center of the room, arms wrapped tightly around herself, trying to steady her breathing. The heavy oak doors had closed behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. She was alone with him. King Darius stood by the tall window, his broad back to her, silver moonlight outlining his powerful frame. He hadn't spoken since they left the ceremony. The silence was worse than any command. Callista swallowed hard. "Your Majesty," she began, voice steadier than she felt. "There must be some mistake. I am not suited to be your bride. I'm from a minor house. I have nothing to offer a king." He turned slowly. The moment his dark eyes met hers, her heart stuttered. There was something in his gaze, raw, intense, and barely contained. It made her feel seen in a way that terrified her. "You are exactly what I chose," he said, voice low and rough. "I picked you." Callista's hands trembled. "Why?" "I saw the other women. They were beautiful, accomplished. They wanted this. I didn't." Darius took one step closer, then another, until he stood directly in front of her, towering over her smaller frame. He leaned down slightly, inhaling near her neck. Callista froze. "Your scent," he murmured, almost to himself. "Jasmine and honey, and something that calls to me like nothing ever has." She pulled back, eyes wide. "My scent." He straightened, jaw tight, as if he had said too much. "You will stay here tonight," he said, changing the subject. "Tomorrow, you will be moved to the royal wing. Servants will attend to you. You will want for nothing." Callista's temper flared. "I don't want your servants. I don't want your wing. I want to go home to my family." Darius's eyes darkened. "You belong to me now." The words sent a shiver down her spine, part fear, part something she refused to name. She lifted her chin defiantly. "No one owns me, not even a king." For a long moment, they stared at each other, two proud souls refusing to yield. Then Darius stepped back, giving her space she hadn't expected. "Sleep," he said quietly. "We will speak more in the morning." He turned and left the room, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. Callista sank onto the edge of the massive bed, heart racing. She had come to the choosing ceremony expecting to be ignored. Instead, she had caught the attention of the most dangerous man in the realm. And something told her that her life would never be the same again. Chapter 4. The next morning, Callista woke up in a bed that felt too soft, in a room that felt too grand. Sunlight streamed through tall arched windows, illuminating marble floors and rich tapestries. Servants had already laid out an elegant gown for her, deep emerald green with gold embroidery. It was more beautiful than anything she had ever owned. She hated it. She dressed quickly in her own simple gown from the day before, ignoring the new one. When the servants knocked and offered breakfast, she politely declined and asked to see the king. They looked nervous. King Darius received her in his private study. He stood behind a massive oak desk, reviewing documents. But the moment she entered, his attention snapped to her completely. Callista stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "I want to go home," she said without preamble. Darius set down his quill slowly. His dark eyes studied her with unnerving intensity. "You are home." "This is not my home," she shot back. "My home is a small estate with leaking roofs and a garden I actually tend to. Not this cage of marble and gold." He stepped around the desk, moving toward her with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken against her will. "You are my chosen bride," he said, voice low. "The choosing ceremony is binding. You belong here now." Callista lifted her chin. "I belong where I choose to belong. And I choose to leave." For a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes, possessiveness mixed with frustration. He stopped just short of touching her. "You feel it too," he murmured. "Don't you? This pull. This recognition." Callista's breath caught. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to tell him he was imagining things. But deep down, she knew he wasn't. There was something about his scent, dark cedar and storm rain, that made her wolf stir in a way she had never experienced before. She stepped back. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. Darius's jaw tightened. For the first time, she saw a crack in his cold control. "You will stay," he said, "at least until the formal bonding ceremony. After that, we can discuss your terms." "Terms?" She laughed bitterly. "You mean I'm your prisoner until you decide I've served my purpose?" His eyes flashed. "You are not my prisoner," he growled. "You are my mate." The word hung between them. Callista's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned and walked toward the door, needing air, needing distance from the man who was turning her entire world upside down. "Callista," he called after her, voice rough. She paused at the door, but didn't turn around. "I will not make this easy for you," she said softly. "I hope you're prepared for that, Your Majesty." Then she left, the heavy door closing behind her with a final sounding click. King Darius stood alone in his study, fists clenched at his sides. His wolf howled with need. And for the first time in his life, the most powerful alpha in the realm wasn't sure he could control what was happening inside him. Chapter 5. The royal gardens were supposed to be peaceful. Instead, Callista felt like she was walking through a beautiful cage. She moved along the stone path lined with blooming night jasmine, the same scent that seemed to haunt her since the ceremony. The Alpha King, Darius, had given her permission to walk the grounds, but she could feel eyes on her everywhere. Guards, servants, courtiers whispering behind fans. She was the new curiosity, the throwaway bride who somehow caught the king's attention. She stopped near a marble fountain, dipping her fingers into the cool water, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. Darius stopped a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind his back. Even in the soft morning light, he looked every bit the powerful ruler, tall, broad-shouldered, with that commanding presence that made the air feel thinner. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly. Callista turned, lifting her chin. "I've been thinking about how I somehow went from being invisible to being the most watched woman in the kingdom overnight." Darius's dark eyes softened slightly. "You were never invisible to me." The words sent an unwelcome flutter through her stomach. She crossed her arms. "This is a mistake. You know it. I know it. I'm not the kind of woman who belongs on a throne. I'm the kind of woman who climbs through windows and steals bread to survive." He took one step closer. "And yet the goddess chose you for me." Callista laughed bitterly. The goddess must have a cruel sense of humor. Darius's jaw tightened. For a moment, she saw something raw in his eyes, frustration, longing, and a fierce protectiveness that made her breath catch. "You feel it," he said, voice dropping. "The pull, the scent. Don't lie to me, Callista." She looked away, heart racing. "I feel something," she admitted reluctantly. "But that doesn't mean I have to accept it. I didn't ask for any of this." "Neither did I," he replied. "But here we are." The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken words and rising tension. Finally, Callista spoke again, softer this time. "I need time. I need to understand what this means. For me, for my family, for us." Darius studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "You have until the bonding ceremony. But know this, Callista, I will not let you go. Not now. Not ever." He turned and walked away, leaving her standing by the fountain with her heart in chaos. She touched her neck where his scent still lingered. And for the first time, she wondered if running was still an option. A message from the creator. Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment to speak directly to you. If you're enjoying the intense tension, possessive energy, and slow burn heat between Darius and Callista, I think you'll absolutely love my erotic dark alpha romance audiobook series. A much spicier, more possessive, and raw experience that goes far beyond what YouTube allows. This is a completely different story from the one we're telling here. It features dangerously obsessive alphas, darker themes, and scorching chemistry that will leave you breathless. Chapter 1 is completely free. You can find the link in my channel dashboard. If you crave that darker, dominant alpha romance vibe, I highly recommend checking it out. Now back to our story. The Alpha King stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, fists clenched on the stone railing. His wolf was restless, furious, hungry. Callista was fighting the bond, and every second she resisted only made him want her more. The choosing ceremony had been meant to be simple. Instead, it had become the beginning of something that could either save him or destroy everything he had built. Chapter 6. The days that followed blurred into a strange, tense rhythm. Callista was given every luxury the palace could offer: beautiful gowns, servants at her beck and call, meals fit for royalty. But she spent most of her time in the gardens or the library, avoiding the king as much as possible. Darius watched her from a distance. He gave her space, but he was never far. His wolf wouldn't allow it. On the 5th evening, he found her in the royal library, curled up in a large window seat with an old book on her lap. Moonlight silvered her reddish-brown hair and made her green eyes look almost luminous. She looked up when he entered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Callista closed the book and set it aside. "You're not going to leave me alone, are you?" she asked. Darius walked closer, stopping a few feet away. "No," he said honestly. "I can't." She let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Because I'm your fated mate? Because you're mine." The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Callista stood up, hugging her arms around herself. "I didn't ask for this. I was supposed to be invisible. Safe. Not whatever this is." Darius's jaw tightened. His pride warred with the overwhelming need to pull her into his arms. "I never wanted a mate," he admitted, voice low. "I was going to choose someone who wouldn't complicate my life. Someone I could keep at a distance." He took one step closer. "Then I smelled you, and everything changed." Callista's breath hitched. She could feel it too. That pull, that magnetic draw that made her want to step closer even as her mind screamed to run. "I'm still a thief," she whispered. "I've spent my life surviving by taking what I need. I don't know how to be soft. I don't know how to be a queen." Darius's eyes darkened with heat. "Then don't be soft," he said, voice rough. "Be exactly who you are. I don't want a perfect queen. I want you." The air between them grew thick. Callista's heart pounded. She took a small step forward, then stopped. "This is dangerous," she murmured. "I know." For a long moment, they stood there, inches apart, breathing the same air, fighting the pull that was growing stronger every day. Then Callista turned and walked away, leaving the king standing alone in the moonlight. But this time, she didn't run far. And Darius smiled, small, dangerous, and full of promise. The game had only just begun. Chapter 7. The tension between them had become unbearable. For the next few days, Callista threw herself into exploring the palace grounds, learning the layout, memorizing guard shifts, old habits from a life of survival. Darius watched her from afar, giving her space, but always aware of where she was. Until the night she tried to run. She waited until the moon was high and the palace was quiet. Dressed in dark clothing, she slipped out through a servant's entrance she had discovered days earlier. Her heart raced as she moved through the shadows toward the outer wall. She almost made it. A strong hand caught her wrist just as she reached the edge of the garden. Callista spun around, knife already in her other hand. Darius stood there, eyes blazing with a mix of fury and something deeper. "Going somewhere," he growled. She tried to pull away. He didn't let go. "Let me go," she hissed. "I don't belong here. I never did. You belong with me." The words were spoken with such raw conviction that they stole her breath. She shoved at his chest with her free hand. "You don't own me." Darius caught her other wrist. pulling her closer until their bodies were nearly touching. His scent, dark cedar and storm rain, surrounded her, making her head spin. "I know you feel it," he said, voice low and rough. "The bond. The pull. Stop fighting it, Callista." She looked up at him, breathing hard, eyes bright with defiance and confusion. "I'm scared," she whispered, the admission slipping out before she could stop it. Something in Darius's expression softened. His grip loosened, but he didn't let go. "So am I," he admitted quietly. "I never wanted a mate. I never wanted to be this vulnerable. But the goddess chose you. And I'm not strong enough to walk away." For a long moment, they stood there in the moonlight, two proud, stubborn souls caught in a pull neither of them could deny. Then Callista slowly lowered her knife. "I'm still going to fight you," she said softly. Darius's lips curved into a small, dangerous smile. "Good," he murmured. "I wouldn't want you any other way." He released her wrists, but didn't step back. Instead, he leaned down and pressed a slow, possessive kiss to her forehead. Callista closed her eyes, heart pounding. The war between them was far from over. But for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to win. Chapter 8. The days that followed were a delicate dance of fire and restraint. Callista no longer tried to run, but she also refused to make things easy for Darius. She challenged him at every turn, questioning palace traditions, pushing back against his decisions, and stealing small things from the kitchens just to see if he would stop her. He never did. Instead, he watched her with a mixture of frustration and dark amusement, his wolf growing more restless with every passing hour. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Darius found her in the royal rose garden, sitting on a stone bench with her knees drawn up to her chest. He approached slowly, giving her time to acknowledge him. Callista glanced up, her bright green eyes guarded. "You've been avoiding the evening meals," he said, stopping a few feet away. "I'm not hungry." "You're lying." She let out a soft, tired laugh. "You're getting too good at reading me." Darius sat down beside her on the bench. The proximity made the air between them feel charged. "I can feel you pulling away," he said quietly. "Every time I get close, you retreat." Callista looked down at her hands. "Because this is terrifying. You're the Alpha King. I'm me. A thief. A nobody. The pack already hates me. They whisper that I trapped you. That I'm not worthy." Darius's jaw tightened. He reached out and gently took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "They don't decide who is worthy of me," he said, voice low and fierce. "I do. And I chose you the moment I smelled your scent across that hall." Callista's breath caught. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. "I'm scared I'll disappoint you," she whispered. "That one day you'll wake up and realize you made a mistake." Darius lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, eyes never leaving hers. "The only mistake would be letting you go." The moment stretched between them, heavy, intimate, and full of unspoken promise. Then Callista leaned in and pressed her forehead against his. "I'm still going to steal from the kitchens," she murmured. Darius chuckled, a low, warm sound that made her heart flutter. "I'll have the cooks leave extra desserts." She smiled against his skin, and for the first time since the choosing ceremony, the tension between them felt less like a battle, and more like the beginning of something beautiful. Chapter 9. The day of the bonding ceremony arrived under a sky painted in gold and rose. The entire palace was alive with anticipation. Nobles, pack elders, and high-ranking wolves filled the grand courtyard. Whispers followed Callista everywhere she went. Some were jealous. Some were angry. Most were simply stunned. The thief from a minor house was about to become Luna. Callista stood in front of the tall mirror in her chambers, wearing a stunning gown of deep emerald and gold. Her long reddish-brown hair had been braided with delicate pearls. She looked every bit a queen, but her hands were trembling. Darius appeared in the doorway, dressed in formal black and silver, looking every inch the powerful Alpha King. His eyes softened the moment they landed on her. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. Callista turned to face him, biting her lip. "I'm still not sure I belong here," she admitted. "I'm still the girl who stole bread to survive." Darius crossed the room and took her hands in his. "You belong with me," he said firmly. "Thief. Survivor. Fighter. You are everything I never knew I needed." The goddess chose well. Callista looked up at him, eyes glistening. I'm going to drive you crazy, she warned. His lips curved into a rare, devastating smile. I'm counting on it. The ceremony was beautiful. Under the ancient bonding arch, surrounded by blooming jasmine, King Darius took Callista's hands and spoke his vows with a voice that carried across the entire courtyard. I claim you, Callista Voss, as my mate, my Luna, and my queen. From this day forward, your fight is my fight. Your heart is my heart. Callista's voice shook slightly as she replied, I claim you, Darius, as my mate, my king, and my equal. I may be a thief, but I stole the best thing in this kingdom. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then Darius pulled her close and kissed her, deep, possessive, and full of promise. The pack cheered. Some still whispered. Some still doubted. But as Darius held Callista in his arms, her head resting against his chest, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had gone to the choosing ceremony to pick a throwaway bride. Instead, he had found the woman who would rule his heart for the rest of his life. The end. Thank you for listening to The Alpha King Thought He'd Pick a Throwaway Bride. What was your favorite moment? Let me know in the comments. New stories drop every week. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on.